you listening, but for the next 30 minutes. But I'll see you.
Production, Buckley.
I'll see you in Vegas.
No.
I'll be.
Well, that's not a good second prize there. Sorry, Kevin, over Cathy.
I'll make sure not to attend your session. And I'll put on my Christian early warning button so that I can turn left when you turn right.
Excellent. So, but Cathy, I'll see you in Seattle anyway. So
Definitely. Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I will not be in Vegas. Something about having a 2-week-old baby or something. I don't know.
You knew that was going to happen. You chose.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully then I could get some acknowledgement from you all that you see it.
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. So with that, we're going to talk today about kind of a lot of the new things that have come about with SharePoint. We're going to start with kind of like how you customize, how you build things, how you create, and all the different things that have come out and the new innovations across SharePoint in the last few months. We're going to start that. We're going to start with the Brand Center being the newest one. And like I said, I'm going to do this as all demo, so feel free to put things into chat. If you have access to the chat, raise your hand, just come off mute. Use the reactions, thumbs up emojis, smiles, whatever, because I'm just going to kind of be talking and showing you things. And so please do interrupt if you have questions or you want to see something or ask a question about how something works.
I am watching the chat, so if you're shy, I will interrupt just like I did and vocalize your question. So feel free to be shy if that's important to you.
Yep. So with that, we'll start, like I said, with the Brand Center. So the Brand Center was introduced about a year ago, and the Brand Center is the location for SharePoint and Viva Connections where you can easily customize themes and custom fonts for your SharePoint and Viva Connections instances. So I'll briefly give the run-in of how the Brand Center is set up. So the Brand Center does require your tenant's global administrator to configure the Brand Center in that first configuration. You do that in the Admin Center, the M365 Admin Center. Underneath Settings, in Org Settings, there is a Brand Center entry. Once you go in and configure this, I've already configured it, so if I click on it, it's just going to show me the final result. But what it's going to do is it looks at your organization, your tenant already. If you are currently using organization assets, it's going to utilize the same site that your organization asset libraries are in to create the Brand Center. If you are not, it's going to recommend creating a net new site. It's going to call that site the Brand Guide. You can fully customize that name to be whatever you want. And once you have that site created, it then allows you to have the Brand Center app. The reason that this does require the global administrator to do this is for custom fonts in SharePoint and in Viva Connections. It does require the usage of a public CDN. And because it is public CDN for custom fonts, it does require a global admin, someone who can make those decisions on behalf of the organization to enable that. If you choose to set up the Brand Center and you never use custom fonts, you're always going to be using private CDNs for all of the remaining assets. That is the default for everything other than custom fonts. So once the global admin does that, you can see what it does is it creates that site and it gives you launch to that app, and then it can be managed by SharePoint admins or site owners straight from the SharePoint Admin Center. So we're just going to jump straight over to that brand site. This is the
Cathy,
Brand Center site. Yes.
Sorry, this question actually just came up. Somebody was asking if there was a recommended CDN. And I wasn't sure, not going to look to see if there's specific Microsoft partners or any recommendations for a platform that works well.
So the Brand Center itself and organization asset libraries use the M365 CDN. That's a part of your Microsoft 365 subscription, which uses Azure and Akamai in the backend.
Okay, so
you can't configure it to use your own. It uses whatever the system is using.
Okay, well, oh, sorry. Did you say you can't configure it? Ah,
No.
okay. Well then, yeah, because that's the rub with a bunch of people that, of course, have had years and years, spent a lot of money, have done all that development, and moving CDNs is such an easy process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it uses the Microsoft 365 CDN, and there's no choice to configure it to be something different.
And that's because they have to layer on the authentication pieces, because these are always going to be authenticated users. And so you have to have that layer of frosting on top of it. That's why you can't move it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It's something that we always push for, but something that has not been enabled.
Well, it's not in Microsoft's interest anyway, but yeah.
Well, it definitely limits for not being able to configure CDN for, say, government customers, right? They need to be able to control the CDN and not have it be whatever Microsoft is using, that flavor of the week.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. So once you get to that site, the site and the Brand Center app are kind of one and the same. The assets and the things that are configured throughout the Brand Center are kind of a part of the site, but they are hidden in the site. So you're not able to directly navigate to, say, the color library, the theme library, things like that. They're hidden. You can only navigate those by using the Brand Center app. So I have to refresh because my gear is missing, because, you know, that's always fun in the sweet bar here.
Should have sacrificed another chicken at lunch.
There it is. It's just that sweet bar has always been a little bit problematic. So when you are in the site, if you are a site owner and you go to that settings gear up at the top right, you'll find the entry point to the Brand Center app itself. And then you can simply click on that and go to it. I've got it open in another tab, so I can easily get back to that site. It will open in the same tab. So if you want it to open in a new, make sure you right click and say open in new tab. When you get to the Brand Center app itself, and again, the Brand Center app is available for anyone that is a site owner of that brand guide site. That site, whatever you chose to call it, that's the root site for the Brand Center app. Site owners have access to the Brand Center app. So this allows, if you have multiple people that manage your colors or your organization assets, to be able to have them all have access to the Brand Center app. When you load up into the Brand Center app, it's kind of staged into kind of two rows of things. The top will have your brand fonts and your brand colors. This is kind of those shared assets that you might want to use across different things and manage them in one place. So the document library for your fonts, the list for your colors are all kind of managed at this level. And then below that is how you apply those to the products. So SharePoint and Viva Connections is what it's enabled for today. So I'll quickly just kind of go in and show you the brand fonts. So I've uploaded quite a few different fonts here into the font library, noting that the Brand Center does recommend that you use the WAF to web optimized font format 2 compression, but it does accept TrueType and OpenType fonts as well if you don't have the licensing to compress those. So you have the ability to do that. And then you'll notice something in everything in the Brand Center. You'll notice a column called visible. So what this is this allows you to say your company changes from Arial to Comic Sans. We'll just use that as the reference. And you no longer want Arial to show up in the picker experiences for people. You would simply come in and mark that as not visible, and then it won't show up in the various picker experiences again. So that works the same for colors as well as fonts. Again, you'll see that visible color picker. And so you'll notice here in the colors, I have one that's kind of this navy that we called Monty. And so it's not visible. And so as we create different things across the different experiences, you'll notice that the other colors that are in this list show up in the picker experiences, but Monty will not, even though it's in our brand color list. So as we talk about how this works, this is the organization location. So in the past, you may have created a theme via a PowerShell and installed that for your organization, and it would show up and change the look under the From Your Organization heading. This allows you to create them at the kind of organization through a UI. So I'm going to showcase in here, I'm going to look at a font package, and then we're going to look at one of these theme packages, but we're not going to create them here. We're going to create in a different location where we can have a little bit more playfulness with it. But if we come in and we look, one of the things you'll notice when you're looking at something that's already been created, it gives you the information about what's there. It tells you if it's visible. It gives you, for fonts in particular, an accessibility reminder. And then I can preview those as to how that particular font package will look on my different locations via SharePoint and Viva Connections, so I can see where that font gets applied in those different locations by coming to that preview and being able to see that. So I could come in and make one of these not visible simply by editing the package and then coming in and turning off that visibility setting. So now when I am looking at font packages through Change the Look, I'm only going to see the I Do Design brand, and I'm not going to see the sample Georgia package. And the same thing with themes. I can come in and set my themes and create themes, and then I can preview them as well. And I can mark them as visible or not visible. So one fun thing to note about this is that you can utilize this brand guide site in any way that you want, but keeping in mind that it is the same location as your organization asset libraries if you're using organization assets for images. So you can see here, setting this up, I've started by adding some guidance for how to use colors, for how to use fonts, but I also have that organization asset library where all of my files are for how people, what images I might want them to use in the organization are available as well. So keeping in mind that you'll want to think about your navigation on this site and what you want to show up and for people to see. The site does require that everyone except external is the permission group to read this site. That gives everyone access to the themes, the font packages, and your organization asset images and templates.
And Pat had a question too, but I think what you just said was, if Joe over here in machining wants to use the brand materials, Joe has to have read access to this site.
Yes, for the organization ones.
And anybody that visits Joe's site also has to have read access because it's going to go collect those assets. So just Joe has to have it.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll explain how that works a little bit when you get to the next part. And Pat, I'm gonna talk about your point coming up. So the brand center and this kind of like top level are your organization level. So these are the themes, the font packages, the images, the templates that you want available for the entire organization, for the whole tenant, for SharePoint and Viva Connections. But something that was introduced later in last year was the concept of site branding. And site branding allows you to create, Teams mark at the top drives me crazy, allows me to create branding for themes, font packages, just for that one site, and it's not for the whole organization. So this allows site owners to customize their sites locally, so just for an individual site. So how that shows up, and we'll look at this from two ways. So first, we're going to go ahead and jump in to Change the Look to look at where those organization assets show up. So you'll see organization here. We've got primary, we've got that different ones set up here. What to note is you may not have seen all of these color schemes as a part of the brand center, but if I had installed any themes via PowerShell, they will still show up and Change the Look until I remove them via PowerShell. They will show up underneath this From Your Organization heading. So we have those, that sample blue that we had before and the teal and the primary, those are all coming from either the PowerShell or the brand center. And then if we go look at our font packages, we should notice, and yes, we're only seeing that one visible font package that we created from the organization here. Now, we have the option here with the site branding entry point to go into that localized branding experience. What you'll notice is it feels very similar to the brand center itself, but it's creating it just for that individual site. Now, we do have the option here to copy from another site. So if there is a site in your tenant that you love, you can paste that URL here, or you could search for it. And so I'm going to type in one. So I could say I want to copy this site's theme or font package. If the site only has a theme, it doesn't have a font package associated to it. So I could copy the theme and it's going to copy it over. Now, you asked about that read access to the organization. How branding works is once you create the branding and you apply it to the site basically gets a localized copy of that. So it copies everything into the site. So those colors, the fonts, everything get copied into the site. So then the people that have permission to that site then have permission to those assets.
So if you go back and change it in Brand Central, it doesn't automatically propagate to everybody that's used it.
It does not. So if you update your company's brand and you update it in the Brand Center app and you need all the sites to be changed, you have to go visit every site and change it via Change the Look.
The one reason that whole PowerShell nightmare might be better.
If you can make it, you can get it to apply consistently, yeah, you can reapply it via PowerShell. But yeah, there isn't a way to automatically push a change down to all of the sites that are using that particular theme or font package.
So we'll just tell all of our branding people that they have to get it right the first time.
That's right. You got to do it right the first time.
Changes ever.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but if you think about it, it does keep things from breaking. If somebody makes an unintentional change, it doesn't, you know, if somebody were to go in and kind of change that font package to use Webdings instead of the company font, like it's not going to make all of your sites automatically change over the font.
Well, and it kind of goes to, and you've been in both orgs. There are some orgs where it's wild, wild west, and everybody gets their own style, and some other org that has the branding czar that says, nope, you can't change your colors, you can't change your fonts. They want to lock everything down, and so it kind of depends on where your org is as to how good or bad that is.
Yeah. So it always, once you create something in site branding, it never replaces what's already there. So the from Microsoft, the from your organization are there. And so the hope is that you're creating things in the Brand Center app that make it easy for people to do and use. So we're going to go ahead and we're not going to copy, but I am going to get you all to help me create a theme and a font package for our site. So we're going to go through and we're going to utilize the create theme to start with. And then what you'll see is you'll see the exact same experience that you would see if we were doing this in the Brand Center app. And so when I come in here and I go to primary color and I try to pick my color, what you'll notice is that set of colors that we created in the Brand Center app for my brand colors is available for me to pick from. And so you can notice here, again, that Monty color doesn't appear in the list, but I also have the option to pick from a color picker. So I could pick from any of these colors, right? I could pick the dark teal, I can pick the purple, I can pick any of these colors to start with, or I can go to add a new color and it will open a color picker. So what you're hoping is that your organization has created enough variety of colors in the brand color library that people are picking from those to create their theme. But it does still give them the option to create the Wild Wild West here.
So if your org has a control freak for a brand czar, can you turn off that choose your own color?
You cannot.
So much for control freaks.
So with this, since we're going to be creating this together, I'm going to get you all to tell me either in chat or by unmuting and telling me what color we want to be our primary color for our site.
First
And
one
I
to chat.
promise it doesn't have to be like a well-designed theme. You can try to make it as like garish and impossible as you would like. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Like
Always going to start with orange.
orange. Okay.
random number generator between 1 and 255 and just do that 3 times to see what happens.
What kind of orange? Is this kind of orange okay? Do we want a brighter orange?
We got a vote for Halloween orange. That works.
Halloween orange. Is this kind of Halloween orange?
Sure.
Look okay?
That's good. Yes, Rebecca. There we go. Okay, we got the nod.
Okay. So one thing to note, look, we've picked our primary color as orange, and look what happened. It has told us that our primary color that we have now chosen is not accessible, and it gives us that guidance of that it needs to be a minimum contrast of 4.5. So we can scroll right over here and see where our problem is, and our problem is that the primary color on the background color, so that orange on white, is only at 2.84. So we have the option here to continue forward with that. We can make an update to our primary color, or we can continue picking our colors knowing that, say, I'm going to pick something different for the background color that might make this more accessible. And so you can continue forward. So from there, I'm just going to continue forward with it and see what we come up with. And at the end, we can decide if we want to change anything. So what color do we want our text to be? Again, we can pick our own color. You'll see as we add colors, it does add them as a selection for you to pick. But we could pick black, we can pick white, we can pick any color that we want here.
If we're going for Halloween, it's got to be orange on black, right? Like we need all of our buttons to look like jack-o'-lanterns.
So do we want the background color to be black?
So that would make the text be flame yellow.
Oh, is that what we got to
Yellow.
do? Background black and then fire yellow? I'm game.
Rebecca, you were typing. Is yellow a good color for?
I really wanted purple as a text color, but I don't want to rock the boat too much.
Purple's kind of Halloween too. Purple or yellow?
I would propose, Cathy, that purple is Halloween only in New Orleans.
Seriously? Okay.
She's giving me the look of disbelief.
I don't know that I believe that, but okay. I'm trying to pick a yellow, and yellow is one of those very difficult ones to pick in a color picker. This kind of yellow?
Sure.
Yeah.
The accessibility is going to be atrocious on that one. And then
That
I'm
looks
assuming we
really
want
good.
black as the background color.
Yes, yes.
Whew, thank goodness. Look what happened.
Look, we
So
can
what
agree
you'll
on our
notice then is
accessibility.
it definitely builds on each other, right? So you can have completely non-accessible primary and text colors, but simply changing the background color will have a significant effect.
I will say that compared to the old PowerShell, twiddle with the hex, upload it, hit refresh, look at it, it's not right. Twiddle with the hex, upload and look at it, refresh, it's not. This is so much better.
And then I want to talk about this dark theme here. So this one is really for a lot of those different places and menus and things like that in SharePoint. You use this, so we have a very dark background color of black. If you have a background color that varies into the dark, it is subjective. You get to decide whether your background color is dark. If you switch this dark theme on, what it does is it makes it so that some of those menu locations will automatically switch the text to white. And so it'll make it a little bit easier for the system to understand if it needs white text or black text. So you can leave it off and have a dark theme. You just might have a few places where it might be harder to read text in the different menus and some of that. And you'll find that, like I said, you can easily come back in and edit the theme to change that. Okay, we have one color left, the accent color, of which I'm going to challenge you all to tell me where accent color is used in SharePoint, because that is the ultimate Easter egg hunt. But we do need a color for the accent color.
Used on the hover?
No, I'm not going to tell you. Accent color. You have to guess where accent color shows up. It does not show up on hover. There's 4 places in all of SharePoint that accent color is used.
Is it around outlines of buttons or anything like that? No, I guess not, because I'm seeing it
No.
right now.
It's when something has been selected.
No.
Past the bar or like the side?
You're thinking way too obvious. You got to go way more obscure.
Oh.
So I will tell you my favorite.
Drag
when you're
and
creating
select.
a page or a news post, one of the options in creating a page or a news post is to have text above the title, right? And it puts it in a little color block above the title. That's using the accent color.
Wow, that is obscure.
So what color is our accent color for our Halloween theme?
Light blue.
Light blue. Can I use light aqua or do you want a light blue?
Boys know red, green, blue, red, yellow. You can use aqua if you want.
Okay. Okay, so we're looking good here. We are accessible. We can come in here, we can pivot over, we can see how this is going to look on our site. And we can see that nowhere here is using accent color, which is fun, right? And then we can name it. I'm going to name it Spooky because that's what Rebecca just put in the chat there. And I think that's a great name for a Halloween theme. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And so now we have our spooky site theme. So we're going to jump over to font packages and we're going to create a font package. This is how custom fonts could show up in our site. So with this one, important to note that it only gives you options of fonts that have been uploaded in the Brand Center app as fonts you can select from. Why? Because fonts are code and we don't want people to go out and, you know, I'm not picking on her, but Jane from accounting might go out to Google and search for a font and download something that has a virus in it and try to upload it and use it. So we do require, and fonts do have licensing requirements. So the only thing that will show up in site branding for people to pick from for font packages are the fonts that you've uploaded into your Brand Center app. So here we've got a few different fonts to pick from. We get to pick 2 font families to start from. So we get to pick a display font and a content font, and then we're going to customize it further. And if you don't know what some of these look like, I can select them and then it will show them over to the side so that we can see what we might want to pick. These are kind of bland, but they give us something to look at. Okay, to the point, anyone object to that or want something different? That does look kind of Halloweenish. Okay, content font. So we get one more choice here. What do we want?
We could use the same font.
Could.
Or we could use that M, whatever it is at the bottom.
The MUFON. Yeah. Okay. So now what you do is now you've picked your 2 font families. So from here, you get to pick where these fonts get distributed across SharePoint. There are 4 categories for you to pick from. You pick your font family, and then if that font family has more than one style to it, you'll be able to pick that as well. So for the title, we have our 2 fonts, the To the Point and MUFON. Which would we like to have for our title?
MUFON looks a little more bold, so.
Okay.
It's got to fit the titles a little more.
So MUFON has that one style. Headline. So we want to stick with MUFON or go to the point?
I guess maybe I don't know the difference between title and headline. Those seem very similar to me.
Part of the fun of creating a font package.
You just can't never know.
So I will give you a hint, and that title is things like your site title, your page title, that kind of thing. Headline, when you're thinking of that, think in your text web part, all of the H2, H3, H4, those use the headline font.
Seems to me like those should be the same. So move on again.
So move on. Okay. And then for our body, so this is the majority of the text in your site, so kind of your body text. So we want that to be to the point, so we can see some difference here. Okay. And then interactive is the last one. So this is for anything that has an interactive action to it. So your navigation, your buttons, things like that.
That needs to blend into the rest of the body so that nobody knows you can click them. So we got to make it the same.
Okay, to the point it is. Okay, so do we want to call this one spooky as well, or do we want to call it something else?
Spooky seems good to me.
It's the theme.
Okay. So once you get to this stage, you can flip over and preview what your font package will look like on your site. So here we can see we've picked two very scriptish fonts. So we can see that, but we are going to go ahead and save it, knowing that we can always come back and update it later if we want to. But here is our font package. So we want to go back to our site now. We've got a theme and a font package, so we can simply navigate back to our site using that site title. And then once it loads up, we will go into change the look. So in change the look now, what you'll notice is there's a new category added from this site that's pulling the branding that we just created, our spooky theme. So we're going to be able to select our spooky theme. So again, those other ones that were created in the Brand Center app or by PowerShell are still here, and the from Microsoft ones are still there as well. So we can go ahead, and I'm just going to double check. Sometimes it has a little change the look hiccup. So I'm going to save that first. And then again, from this site, spooky is here as well as the others. So we're going to go ahead and apply that. And so as that gets applied to our site, some of the things that you'll notice in having that font package applied, things that you may not have considered in creating a font package, font sizing. So we picked that to the point for our interactive item, and you can see that to the point is a smaller font. And so you can see it did make our navigation items very small and difficult to read. But that's kind of some of the fun of it, right? Our site title has that larger one, and you'll notice things like the menus and core features of SharePoint did not change font. That is intentional because in the past, when you customized SharePoint, when you had on-premises, if you changed a font, it literally changed every piece of text on a page, every menu, everything. And the number of people that would change their font to Webdings and Wingdings, and then I would get phone calls asking me to help them change it back because they could not navigate any of their menu structures. So they didn't have the location memorized, and they didn't speak Webdings and Wingdings. I don't know why not. So they couldn't go back into the menu and go to change the look to change it back. They didn't know where it was. So you had to go reset it via PowerShell. It was a lot of fun. So now you don't have to worry about that. Your menus stay in Sego so that you can always navigate around. But you can see here all the different things that do come over and do get translated over. So with that, let's go ahead and edit, and let's look at a few things here. So here is our text web part. Our text web part utilizes a headline, and then it has some text. So it is great that as part of the text web part now, I can make that text larger. So if I do, I'm really set on to the point, I can make that larger. I can play around with my different headings. You see the headings do change the text. So it isn't just text there, it changes the font of everything. Changing it back to normal will change the different things around. So you can play around with that, and you can see things like the menu structure for add still stays the same. So that gives you kind of a quick run through of the Brand Center and the Brand Center with the organization, and then the site branding and how that affects customization. So you can kind of see a little bit there. Now, next, we want to show and talk about some of the new things that have shown up into SharePoint for publishing, for creating, for editing, for new web parts, all the different things there. So I'm going to jump over to our main intranet site, the toolbox. And here we're going to start by playing with a few things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new page. But we now have this new option of this page with Copilot. So I can create a page with Copilot. It's in preview. And so what you'll notice here is that it starts with kind of this, what do you want to create? You can use a prompt to start with what you want to create. And you can type that directly there, or you could pick from the different templates that they've put together. So you can select one, you can see kind of the preview of what that might look like, but you can also see these kind of prompts that you can fill in to help it understand what you want, and you can add a file here. So we can see newsletter, and I'm just going to briefly go through them all so that you can see there's an event, there's a status update, there is a process page, there is a topic page, and then the last one is a leadership team message. And so you can see that one does include stream video as part of that template proposal. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just select the newsletter. And so we can go through and do that, but I am going to use a document that I have. So I have a Word document that describes the event today. So we're going to go ahead and select that, but you can see, you can go through and fill this out. So say you don't have a document, you can come through and say, create a newsletter page for, and so we could just type in here. And then you can say, I want it to have a news section, a quote, a spotlight, an event, all of that. You can add multiple pages. The other thing that you can adjust here is the tone of voice with Copilot. So you can have it be professional, casual. My favorite that I laugh at is enthusiastic, because I just love the thought that it's going to be enthusiastic, engaging, and creative.
They get free hilarious.
Yeah, there's no like comedic, there's no anything like that. Do we want to pick a different tone of voice other than professional and see what it'll do?
Yeah, I want to see creative.
Creative?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, and then you can also tell it how long you want it to be. So you can pick, you want it to be concise, medium, or longer. So any choices here? Leave it as medium.
More words. If he's going to be creative, he's got to be loquacious as well.
Spoken like you're going to get paid by the word to write software.
So medium or longer is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stick with medium. So here we can go through now and we can hit create, and Copilot is going to go build a new page for us. And so we are creating that. We did keep the private draft selected. So it's going to go through, and you can see the little Copilot prompt down at the bottom giving me the status of what it's doing. So it's working on creating a title section, and it's pulling from my document, pulling from the prompt, picking images, pulling everything together. It's picking and building out those sections that we told it to add. So it was news, spotlight, quote. It's going to pull all of those different things.
I wonder how we got a guy reading a newspaper on a white sofa as our banner. Got the date right.
The date was in the Word document. Because remember, I did prompt it with a Word document that was basically the meeting invite for today.
So because Kevin wrote the meeting invite, you could say that you built this whole page right here, Kevin.
Giddy up.
Right? So it's gone through it's built out the page. It's pulled all of the sections that we told it to do news, to do a quote, a spotlight, to give me an event, upcoming actions, collaborators, and until next time, like what's next section. So it did build all of that out, and we have the option to keep it. So we can simply keep it, we can discard it, we can, you know, say they don't have the ability for us to revise it right now. So we're just going to go ahead and say keep it. But once we say keep it, now we have this and we can come in and we can customize it. And remember that in these now, I could still use Copilot that's available in things like the text web part to auto rewrite, to adjust it to make it concise or longer, or change that tone. So I think we had said we also wanted to see what it would do for an enthusiastic tone. So we can do that, and it can rewrite that with a different tone. So you could have different sections of text on your page with different tones depending on what you want. So here it does give me those 3 different options of that to say what we want. And so we can look at that and see what we might want there. So I kind of like this one, I like the exclamation point right at the beginning, and we could replace it or we can insert it below. So we'll go ahead and replace that text. And so you have that option there. Now it's opened into edit, so we can change things up. So say, great, this image is not really super exciting, but maybe we can utilize image shapes to change it up. And of course, then it's going to have a vomit session and lose its mind. Perfect. We'll just go pick a different image then because it didn't like that. So we'll pick from our org assets. So anything in here strike you as a fun image to throw in?
You traveled across the country with a bunch of cats, so yeah.
I mean, there's a theme to a lot of mine. So maybe this cat and dog together on the couch with a computer for a user group. That's kind of a fun one. Right. So we could maybe then look at a shape for this one. Maybe oh, it's not liking image shapes. There we go. Maybe a fun little hexagon of them, just to kind of highlight what we want of that image. So we can go through and do that. And then maybe, you know, here we do have a few different things that we can utilize now. So as part of it, we now have a couple of new, there's the banner web part, things like that. So we can say made for email, we can go from that. But here's some other things that we can notice as we look at this. So this is a news post. So we do have a preview option to where I can look at, and this is brand new. So I can look at what my page is going to look like on a desktop. I can look at what my page might look like on the mobile phone. And I can also look at what my page might look like as the email notice that gets sent out. So I can look at these as a preview now. And then I can also come over here and I could utilize design ideas if I wanted something different. But another thing that's new is they've added in an accessibility assistant. So I can check my page for what might be accessibility issues. So you can see here for our banner web part here at the top, we're missing alt text. And then we have some hard to read text contrast and inconsistent headings here as part of the text web part. And so we can go through and see what might be happening kind of piece by piece for the different text web parts to see if we want to go through and fix that. And then also for the images as well. We're missing alt text on all of our images. So we can use the accessibility checker now for pages to make our pages more accessible. So
We'll just hire people with good young eyes.
Yeah.
Counts you out.
I'm gone. Yeah, you're right.
So we can go ahead and we'll, let's post our page. It does create it as a news post. And then I can send it as email, or I'm just going to go ahead and skip that because I'm the only person in this tenant other than Megan Bowen, the hardest working person in Contoso. So that gives us this. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the new web parts that have been introduced and some of the things that you'll see in SharePoint. So these right here are built using the new editorial web part or editorial card web part. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add that editorial card so that we can look at the different options that are a part of it. So the new editorial card is really kind of a bit more of a visual, think of it as a more visual quick link or call to action. And it has a little bit more content that you can put, and it has some additional stylings to it. So it has 3 different kind of designs. It has this image overlay. It has a color block. And then it has a split design where you get to have that image and the color. So we can look at these and play around with it. So as we go into that split design, it is important to note that this kind of editing panel on the right side now when we're editing pages and content in SharePoint has more options than the drop downs here. So here when I'm looking at this and I want to maybe change that side to be teal and pulling from our theme colors, I can do that. I can change the content alignment to be left or right, top, bottom, centered, distribute it. I can have all of those different things here. So it gives us a little bit different options for what we want. So color block, because I had not selected a color, was still keeping my image. Now you can see I've selected a color, so it's going to go strictly to that color. And then image overlay, having that image, I can come through and pick any image for this. So if we want to pick just a quick image, just grab that first one. Then you have that kind of image overlay option. And with the image overlay option, you do have the opacity. So you can say, I want to have an overlay of black or white, and I can say I want it to have no overlay. I want it to be darker, things like that. This is important from the accessibility perspective to be able to read your text. And then you have some options when it comes to the call to action. And how you want it to work. You want it to be an icon, you want it to be text, or maybe you want someone to click on the entire card and it to take them somewhere. They don't have to click on just that small button area. And so you can pick those here as well. So it's a little bit more what to play around with, and kind of you can be a bit more creative with these. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the most fun invention that they've given us, which is the flexible layout section. So this is a flexible section. So it is a new section type. You can insert a flexible section anywhere into your layout. You can pick from any of the background colors. You can add your own image there. And then if you want to add web parts into this, it is easiest, I'll just be honest, to grab them from this toolbox here on the right, and then you just drag and drop them into your page. Now, what you'll notice when you do this, there's a grid that shows up. So if I was to add some text here, right, I can make it larger, I can drag it, and then I can drag this web part around and it snaps to that grid. If you can see that grid, let me pick a different background color so you can see that grid better.
That is wicked cool.
Right.
Does it only work with the built-in SharePoint web parts, or can you do like...
You can put third-party web parts in it too. They do need some additional configuration to work with that, but you can put third-party in here. So if we come in and say, make this text much larger, make it 68, you'll see the section expands automatically, but then I can make this bigger. I can do different things with it. So then let's come in and let's grab an image and add an image here. Maybe grab an icon so we have something easy to play with. So we'll grab this kind of bookshelf one. And one thing you'll note with these you can stack things on top of each other in the flexible sections, right? So I can now put this there, but maybe I want it to be behind it. So you can do that. You can still move things around. You can resize it. But this is how you achieve some of these kind of more advanced designs and getting rid of some of that built-in white space that SharePoint has in the column sections and things like that. So you have the ability to kind of move things around. It's really cool. You can grab and move things around all of this, but you'll always see that kind of grid show up behind it. It does snap to those grid lines, so you can't put something like halfway between it. It does have to stay on those grid lines.
So Cathy,
yeah.
What does it do when your page goes responsive?
Yes, it's a great idea. A great question. So you can actually adjust this. So in the flexible section itself, what you'll see is there is a mobile and email reflow. So what does it do? It lets you select either top to bottom or left to right, and it will simply stack things. So where you have them overlapped. So say if I have this image right behind it, it's going to put the image underneath it in that top to bottom. Left to right, it would be underneath it because I selected left to right. If I wanted the image to be above it, I would have to either have it be just above the text or again, just to the left of that text item. So it bases it based off how you've done that and how you're using your site. But you can change that reflow to be either left to right or top to bottom.
You don't know this, but Josh has just decided to rewrite his entire site in one big flexible section.
Yeah, that's not my call to make, but now I'm actually kind of glad that maybe some of the people I invited didn't come to this because it's good to do that, yes.
I will be honest, I think flexible layouts the flexible section layout option is great. I also think it is not a one size fits all. And I don't believe you should build an entire page or site using only flexible layout because you were just seeing and understanding how it's going to reflow is going to be harder. Except playing with accessibility for everything in a flexible section can be harder because as your screen, I'll just make my screen smaller. So as your screen gets smaller, because I think you can see my entire screen there, things will move around and the text may not be always 100% behind that item that you put there. So you do have to, and I definitely noticed that here with this one, I have an image behind the text. And so when it reflows, white text on white background, it doesn't work well. And so there are things that you have to think about here. And yes, not all web parts do a lot of different different changes and things like that. So you can make some things a little bit smaller. The editorial card you can make a little bit smaller than it was before because you can make it match different things. You can make your images whatever size you want, but you can pull in basically any web part into this flexible section as well as your third-party web parts. But you do have to think about how you want them to show up.
Did you see that Trent had asked a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know how grouping items in a flexible? So there isn't really a grouping option. You can move things above or below in order, but there isn't a way, the grouping you'll see is you can group them, but it still does whatever is kind of, so if I'm going left to right, it's still going to pull things out of the group and stack them up, as far as I know, unless they changed something in the last few weeks.
So what you're saying, Cathy, is that because the bus that looks like a bunch of books is 4 pixels further left than the text, that it's going to go first if we go left to right, but because the sample text starts above the book-shaped bus, it would go first top to bottom.
Correct.
And if you wanted the bus to be in the middle, but still flow above the text, you could just give it a long invisible edge to stick out past the text.
Yes. And if you want it to be above, you would just, have it, even something like this would make it, if you're going top to bottom, it would reflow the way you want it to.
And I'm assuming that it's going to see even the invisible. So if we had a bunch of white space, for example, above that boss, it's going to see that when it starts to flow things.
Yes, it will.
That might do funky things when you flow it, because now it has to account for that space, but maybe one way to get creative.
Yes. But as far as I know, Trent, grouping them together doesn't say keep it together when it reflows. It will still split them apart. As far as I understand it, that's how it was just up until a couple of weeks ago, unless they've made a change. But they do constantly change things. So they may have heard that feedback and kept them together, but
Microsoft never makes changes.
Not that I'm aware of.
never, right? But hopefully this gives you a little bit of excitement. And then there's other pieces, as well. Here, if I come in and I do want to create just a regular page, we'll just create a fun visual page here. A lot of this in our spooky site is still available. And I'll show you again where that one little piece, that one little thing, text above title. That is where our accents are shown, and it shows up in the news web part and other things as well. But yeah, you could come in and play with some of these, and a lot of these web parts are available. But one of the things I'll show you here, this is the new banner web part, right? So the banner web part does have new design options. So it's got this kind of author focused, the fade, which is going to pull that fade image. It has our original, and then it's got the color block, the plain, the image and title, and the overlap that were there before. But the fun thing that you can do, and now you can see that accent color showing up. The fun thing that you can do here is say I want my page to resemble the home page, which didn't have that big page title region banner web part at the top. I can delete that web part and I can delete that section. And now if I publish my page, it lets me put the content all the way to the top of the page, right under the site header. So I no longer am required to have that page header region or the banner web part at the top of my pages, which just helps a lot, right? Because that was something we always wanted to do, and we had to go copy the home page and then change the content. And now you can do that simply by removing that banner web part on pages and news posts.
That's cool.
You have a little bit of option. You have a couple of new web parts. They are doing things like adding animation into things. So you'll start to see things moving a little bit. You'll start to see things moving. I think the most obvious place that they will move is in an email. When you get that news post sent as email, you'll see things kind of previewing, showing up in different places. But you'll see some of that start to come in. Did this make any of you want to go redo pages and content in your sites?
Yes, I was very interested about the flexible, so thanks for sharing that.
They're a lot of fun. They are a little challenging. I think the best tips that I can give is you can move them by like trying to hover and grab, but I have not found as much success with that as getting this like just move web part from that little toolbar. That always works. Trying to find and hover and click and grab is sometimes kind of problematic to grab that little space. Resizing is fairly easy with those bars, but the grabbing to move is a little bit problematic. It looks like they have improved that a little bit since the last time I tried it, but you can always grab it from this move. And then the other thing to note is if you want to make your section, so now our content has gotten smaller than it was before, there is this kind of like bar here that you can use to resize the section. What I find a lot of times, if you don't have a super wide monitor like I have right now, that's going to be hidden behind this property panel. And so you'll need to minimize this panel using this little arrow here to be able to see that, so that you can get to that to resize your section. So those are some of my tips. And sometimes if you're really wanting to like play with it, and so the grid is not as easy to see in some color designs and some background colors as others. And so the grid is super easy to see on a dark background color. So if you're really looking to do that, but you want a different color, sometimes just throwing it to that to be able to align to the grid is helpful.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, thoughts?
So just something that I've been thinking about for my organization, kind of going back to the beginning of what you said. When you're first setting up the branding center, and you said if you don't have anything in your organizational assets or whatever, it allows you to kind of make this whole brand new site or whatever. We have quite a bit of things currently in our organizational assets. Will it just, and we have it all right now kind of on our root site, like our big home that everybody goes to. So if it converts that, you kind of gave the impression that like if you already have organizational assets, it'll just turn that site into the branding center. Is that going to like just clobber our home site and everything that we've done to it? Is it going to give us the option to create a new branding site and move the stuff over? Or should we do that before and then create a branding site based off of the new organizational asset? Do you have any thoughts about how to deal with that?
Yeah, so there is no way to like move it automatically or to say, no, don't use that site. I want to have a new site. It's going to pick whatever is your organization asset library site location and designate that. Now it won't clobber it, but I'm assuming if you're using that and it's your like intranet home site, that there's maybe more owners on that site, then you might want to have access to the Brand Center app. But it is because it is all site owners on that site who have access to the Brand Center app from that settings gear. There's a lot of things you could do there. Just train your site owners to say, hey, if you're not in the group, don't go touch it. You know, like don't go create things there.
The easiest answer and the one that never works.
Yeah, it never works, but it will put, all it does is create those back-end libraries for your fonts, colors, themes, and all of that. And it adds the link to the Brand Center app in the site settings gear. Okay. So if you want it to be in a different site, you would want to move your organization asset libraries to a different site, because it will automatically, when you go to set up the Brand Center app, it will pick that site.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But yeah, you have to do all that PowerShell to like undesignated it as an org asset library, move it to a new, and then set it up there. Yeah, you can do that slowly if you want Brand Center faster. Once you undesignate all of your libraries and do run the PowerShell to check that you've gotten rid of all of your organization asset libraries. But the person that's configuring that in the Global Admin Center, if it finds something, it will continue to tell them, it will continue to tell you that that site is what it's selecting. So then you know you have to go back and run that PowerShell to find any others that might be org asset libraries.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully this inspired a few people to go play with some of the new features, try out site branding. It does give people a lot of power. It does get a little scary for what people might do. The Brand Center is also there, and a lot of makes it easier than running the PowerShell. The PowerShell and creating themes that way was very painful, and so this makes it a little bit easier. And fonts are a lot of fun, but do note that with fonts there can be issues, right? So just to kind of show some of those issues, excuse me. So if I come here, you'll notice this site has this like, you know, very kind of paint looking design here. If I come in and change that to say Georgia Pro condensed, right? Like my content does definitely change. And these are both flexible sections. So if my text box isn't wide enough, right? So if I came in here and we'll save this and I'll go change one of these. So we'll edit the page and then we'll come into this top one and let's make this text box smaller, right? So if I then come in, let's republish, and then we'll go back to change the look. So if I had this as my original font, you know, this one, you can see like things might move around based off the size of the font. Things might overlap. These are some of the things to think about, especially when you're doing flexible sections. That if you're doing a flexible section, maybe make your text boxes a little bit wider for headings and things like that than you might typically have wanted them to be, because it will resize them and make text overflow over your other content that you didn't intend just by changing the font. And noting that, like, because it does require public CDN, like people will be able to get that font delivered, but there are some issues, right? If it's a fallback, it will go back to Sego. Like if that font suddenly is not available, it's going to go back to the default font for people to be rendered in. So just be aware of some of those things when it comes to custom fonts and the flexible sections in particular.
I think that would fix a big problem we're having, though. We've been trying to play with fonts a little bit, but the biggest thing that scared us away is it seems like every solution we've come up with for fonts doesn't seem to work on Macintosh computers. Like they assume that the computer has it already on the computer, or
Just don't let people have Macs. It's easy.
you know, that's my choice, but unfortunately, again, above my pay grade, so I don't get to make that decision. But it sounds like having it on a CDN and allowing them to download it might actually solve that problem for them. So I'm excited to try that out.
Yeah, it will fix the web, right? It won't fix it in any of your mobile applications. So say if you're using Viva Connections and Teams, it won't render the font in your iOS Teams application. But it will do it for anything in a browser.
Sweet.
That's a pretty important caveat.
Yeah, we've kind of made the decision as an organization that mobile stuff doesn't exist, so.
Still get your head in the sand, do you?
Yeah, pretty much. Makes my life easier, though. I don't have to design anything to be responsive.
And as long as you never need another job, you're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who would
Works on that way.
have-
Always look at it as job security, right? Like every little decision that Microsoft makes that's kind of crazy is just job security for all of us.
Does anybody online have any questions that we haven't asked yet?
Anything you were
When this
hoping
is
to
coming
see
to
that you
government
didn't?
tenants.
So I will say, for government tenants, just so that we're all clear here, the Brand Center is available. It is shipped into government tenants. The holdup into why Microsoft didn't publish out that it was available for government was the public CDN requirement for custom fonts. So for government tenants, if you want the Brand Center for themes, or if you're available to have that override on the public CDN for fonts, you can use it. If you create the Brand Center for a government tenant, because it is available in the M365 Admin Center, it should not be excluded there. And don't use custom fonts. You're not using a public CDN and you're not opening yourself up to any of the public CDN pieces.
Okay.
And so I was just asked if we were going to put this on our YouTube page. Are you okay with that, Cathy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then Josh is right. It might take me a minute, but it'll get up there.
I'll keep poking him every couple of days. I usually do, so.
Yep. Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Cathy. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Thanks for all the exciting new ways to use Brand Center. That was really fun, really got me thinking, got me a little bit scared of what my company is going to ask me to do now.
We won't tell your kids on YouTube.
Okay, that sounds great.
And what people are gonna try out and do and call you to fix.
Yeah, that's another part of it.
But it's a lot of fun, right? It opens up a lot of flexibility, a lot of creativity, and allows people to really make their sites and content their own, which is great.
Okay, so we've already kind of opened it up for questions for Cathy, but at the end of all of our meetings, we just kind of open it up for questions in general as well. If you have anything that you want to ask Cathy or anything that you want to ask anyone here in the room or the general hive mind, if you have any problems that you need help with, we leave a little bit of time at the end for that. If anybody has any, speak now or hold your peace until next month, I guess.
And if you want to come give a presentation next month.
I was getting there. I was going to let them, I was going to let them simmer for just a minute. But yeah, we don't actually have anything lined up right now for next month. Currently, our thought process is that we're going to have a bunch of people who went down to the conference in Las Vegas, sit around a table and give a little 5-minute, like, what was your favorite talk? What did you learn? Open it up for questions for anybody who wants to ask the panel of experts kind of a thing. But we would prefer that sort of a thing be a backup plan. So if you have anybody who would like to speak or you have any topic that you would like to learn about or anything like that, please get in touch with us. You can use the user group chat right here, or you can email us at, I think it's info@utsharepoint.org. We monitor that. So if you have any ideas, let us know soon so that we can find an appropriate speaker for you. We'd love to give presentations that you guys are interested in hearing. And the only way that we know about that is that you request them. So please get to us for that. Otherwise, you'll have to listen to a panel of us babbling next month. Well, I guess I shouldn't say us. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to have a new baby, so I'm taking next month off. But you'll have to listen to...
I have a question. Recommended conferences, not, I guess they have to be after July 1st because of our fiscal year, but any ideas, thoughts, Microsoft 365 related conferences to attend?
I've always been a fan of Ignite. It's ginormous.
Yeah.
But it's good.
I went to Ignite and it was all Copilot stuff.
There is the M365 TechCon, which is in Seattle in June, but is in Atlanta in August.
Okay.
And so that one has a lot more SharePoint, OneDrive, not all Copilot focused. And so that's always
Is that the one that was in DC last year?
Yes. They rotate around locations. So they're doing Atlanta in August. And I don't know where they'll do later in the late part of the year, but right now they've announced Seattle in June and Atlanta in August.
Perfect.
And they're, I think, more independent than a lot of the others too, right? So it's more of a user view, unless
you get community, a lot of community sessions, some Microsoft sessions, but a lot of community presenters, MVPs and such.
I actually enjoyed that. I did go to NDC and it was a little bit, I think it was a smaller conference, but like I feel like the presenters were very open to questions and it just was because of the size of the conference. It was, so yeah, the names are so similar. I wasn't sure which was which. So the M365 TechCon then.
Yeah, I think it's called TechCon now, or M365 TechCon. They'll just search TechCon and SharePoint or M365 and it'll probably come up.
Perfect. Thank you.
That was where I heard one of my favorite Microsoft folks ever, when one of the presenters who happened to be a Microsoft employee said, yeah, you can Google that on Bing.
Because you know what Bing stands for, right? Because it's not Google.
That's right.
I once got in trouble for saying Google it in a Microsoft office.
Yeah, I'll Bing it just doesn't have the same impact.
Well, you think about like the past tense of Bing, bang, bung, like I bunged it, like that. No, doesn't work for me.
You can't say you binged it.
Right. But if you type that out, it's binged.
I've never thought about that one. I binged it.
And with that note, let's go home.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cathy.
27th. We'll see you here.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
See you. Bye.
So you couldn't start the recording. Can you end it?